see. I'm not really in a good place right now. You know, well, you probably don't know. I'm trying to figure things out. And it's ridiculous because I'm trying to figure things out as a 38-year-old. Soon to be 39-year-old. Well, not that soon. But it's it's this thing that kind of keeps popping up for me is the I think it was Anthony and Cleopatra, the play for that one of Shakespeare's last plays. And even at the time that I read it in, one of my 5 Shakespeare classes, in college, it was something that I even resonated there because at that time I was dealing with my dad kind of coming into this section of his life. And yeah, it could be called a midlife crisis, but the way that midlife crisis sounds is that it's like a short thing and then you're going to go back to being normal. But that's like go back to being the normal, responsible accountant dad that made sure he's encouraged his daughters to believe in themselves, encouraged them that they could do anything that they wanted to do, encouraged them to, there was no limit. And he never went back to that. He never became that dad again. And that was hard for me. As obviously as it would be for anybody. One of the things in that class that I remember, hold on. You feel better? Okay. One of the things that I remember in that class, we were kind of all sitting around in a circle, which is really a great way to, and I feel is a better way when you are discussing you're discussing something that has to do with literature or really more about something that is about a life experience. It's kind of silly to be in one of those auditorium style or all you're seeing is the back of somebody else's head and you're expecting participation from, the teacher's expecting participation. How can you participate? I can't see the other person. All I see is the back of their head. What am I supposed to do? Have a conversation with the back of their head? Sure, I'm sure it'll answer. You can't read anybody that way. You can't feel your own emotion because you don't know who these other people are that are in the room with you. Which is a little off topic, but that's besides the point. We were sitting in a circle in a college Shakespeare class, and we were, this semester, I think we touched on 2 or maybe 3 top Shakespeare pieces. And we spent probably a whole week just sitting talking about each piece of the play. By the end of the week, I was pretty exhausted by the subject. Because the one thing that everybody kept going back to was how ridiculous these grown adults were. They have all of the privilege in the world. They are both running major armies, and they just can't seem to get their shit together. One's running over here and the other one's going that way or this way. The army doesn't know what's happening. And they're just simply driven not even by love, because that's what was happening may have been rooted in love and affection, and that does come into it, but at some point, just their erratic behavior and this, dying by a snake and the other one by the sword. It's like the original Cleopatra, Romeo and Juliet story, which Shakespeare, took that genre and took that like story and just mixed and repeat in so many different ways, and which is great. But Romeo and Juliet was about something totally different, even though it was the same plot and the same kind of setup. Two warring factions, and two young lovers caught in the middle. These were not young lovers. These were, Anthony, Caesar's left or right hand. And then you have Cleopatra, who's supposed to be the most strategic, driven thinker of the whole batch in ancient times. I mean, even today, she would just like rule the world. And of course a lot of it was how she just was automatically given an army, which definitely helps. And just on and on. This play is going on and on about how, and the class was going on and on about how ridiculous they were and how so teenager-like they were, driven by whatever is happening, and they're not acting in a plan or in a strategy. They were acting in distress, which is what teenagers get caught up with, right? That's kind of like, that's what makes teenagers hard, is because they are constantly in distress, and not in like this somebody's hurt their feelings distress. They are teenagers are flooded with these hormones that are not balanced. They're being introduced, and they've just got this drive to where just like all of it's just being produced in their new stage of growth. And so teenagers have an excuse. They have a perfect excuse. They're driven by things that are out, these internal factors, with very little external. Like, external factors are important in their case, but it's more internal for teenagers. However, when you get into this stage that Anthony and Cleopatra and my dad were at, what drives you are these pressures of the world. And those pressures can be collapsing. And I know that by the time we had come to maturity as girls, I have two other sisters. One's a year and a half older than me. One's 5 years younger than me. But I remember watching him, just one piece at a time of him just dropping away. That encouragement, that love. Don't get me wrong, he still loves me, but just that belief that I will make it. And love that isn't overridden by fear, because he knows, just as every parent knows, how difficult it is to go into the world and not just make it like you're given a trophy at the end, but go into the world and be okay. Parents don't usually have these incredible expectations that you're supposed to be this money maker or prom queen of the world or run a CEO company, which is purely based off of, almost entirely off of privilege, with some outlying stragglers. Parents want their children to just be okay. And they want them to be okay for themselves. Not be okay so that their children can stand vigil at their death. Because what is death? It's nothing. It's the end. There's nothing. Why would you go through 18 years of hard emotional labor, which is what parenting is. It's emotional labor. And why would you go through that just so that you can tell God that your child was there and stood vigil over you at your time of death? Or treated you right when you got to that point where you were no longer sane and you were just in diapers? Sure, we all want to make sure our parents are okay. But we can't always do that. Especially since at that point they are no longer able to give up that piece of themselves that they still have control over. Having aging parents is hard. Even if, whether your situation is that you are in a more stronger web-knit community or web-knit family, or you have more resources, or if it's just you and your parent and maybe 2 siblings, it's all hard. My dad refuses to tell me that he's not okay. He's had 5 heart attacks. And this is where sometimes you, like your parents before, how they wanted you to be okay. You just want them to be okay. All I want for my dad is to be okay.